welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I am the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me, of course, is Josh Mansfield. Josh, welcome back to Idaho. How was your time down in San Antonio?
San Antonio was great. The travel, a nightmare.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I'll preface by saying I should have known because my boss scheduled me to fly American.
Friends don't let friends fly American.
Friends don't let friends fly American.
Listen, I have been flying a lot for years, okay? Many years. I've had a year where I pretty much exclusively flew Southwest, JetBlue, because I live in New York. I've done American, and now I'm a Delta flyer. And, I've had status on most of these airlines at one point or another. And American, in my year of American, was my worst flying year, for sure. Just a bad airline with, like, employees that hate you and do not want you to have a nice time flying the airline. So I'm sorry for you. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So, both flights. So first flight going from Salt Lake to Phoenix, 2-hour delay. Of course, with that 2-hour delay, they have to rebook our connection to San Antonio. We roll into our hotel at 4 a.m.
Oh God.
Terrible. We do the conference, whatever. It's behind us. We're moving forward. That's why I look like a zombie in Thursday's show, because I'm pulling myself out of bed after a few hours of sleep. So we go into the next, coming home, show up at the airport after a great couple rounds of disc golf. Shout out to Scott and Wayne for showing us around. Had a great time playing disc golf in San Antonio. So definitely appreciate that.
Where'd you play?
So we played the Zip disc golf course and we played Live Oak. And I will say what's funny is that you'd see all the San Antonio natives who were wearing beanies and a couple layers and jackets and had gloves. And Megan and I were in shorts and a t-shirt because 50 degrees to us was just gorgeous.
That's beautiful, warm.
Yeah, I was enjoying the warm vacation. I came back to 10-degree weather, but then coming back, we show up at the airport and I go to the mobile check-in kiosk, punching in the numbers and nothing's popping up. So I get an attendant to help me. Doesn't pop up. So I go over to the front desk and she's like, "Oh yeah, your flight's been canceled." No email, nothing, no sort of communication.
Oh my God.
Lack of crew. They don't have enough crew due to COVID. So they're like, "We're actually going to have to rebook you on a flight tomorrow." It's like, okay. 24 hours later. So they give us the hotel voucher. That still means, though, that on Monday, we spent 6 hours in the airport waiting. And then we're waiting, and they announce that our flight had engine problems, and they were doing a high-pressure test on the engine. And they're like, "We're rebooking you till 7, but we really don't think it's going to be 7.
Oh, God.
In typical American fashion. So that gets delayed. We get rescheduled on a different connection. End up showing back up at our house in Idaho at about 3:30 in the morning.
Oh, my God. So brutal.
It was a long... 3:30 in the morning, about 32 hours later than we expected to be home.
Wow.
So
make sure, if you haven't already, you got to reach out to American. This is advice for everybody. Reach out to American and ask for compensation, because sometimes airlines will just give you that straight up. Other times they won't, but if you ask, you will get it when it's their fault. Because it's one thing when weather delays your flights. You
Sure.
just got to roll the punches. It's like there's lightning or there's snow or whatever. There's nothing you can really do. But when it's crewing and it's mechanical, that's their fault.
Yep.
They'll reimburse your food expenses probably if you ask, and they'll probably
they gave us vouchers for that.
They gave you vouchers.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Did
Yeah.
they give you money towards a future flight?
They had not yet. I'm going to call and harass them about that.
Yes, you got to do it.
Yeah.
You got to do it, because that's just totally unacceptable. That's brutal. Well, anyway, I'm glad you made it back at least.
Thank you. Yes.
And here we are in the show. I also had a little bit of not really travel drama, but this is a very New York City thing. Yeah, you had a very American thing, American Airlines thing. I had a very New York City thing, which is that at like 2 a.m. last night, the radiator in my room was just spraying water into the air out of its valve and making a colossal racket. And I try to turn it off, and I try to, make it stop making all this noise. There's just nothing can be done. Nothing can be done. I had to go sleep on the couch. So
wow.
Anyway, I at least got back to sleep and had, but just like the radiator's mind of its own. Why is it doing that? I don't know. But it's classic New York.
Really interesting.
Right.
I've never lived at a place with a radiator.
Super old boiler radiators. That's just how it goes.
Yeah, no, never had that before.
But big news, all of our problems aside, the winter aside, disc golf is back this week, baby.
Back.
We're back. Wow. It's not an Elite Series event, but the All-Star DGPT event is this weekend. And we've got the draft coming up live. It'll be aired on Disc Golf Network on Thursday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time. So we're going to be able to see what the teams are going to be and then get ready for some live disc golf this weekend. And, kind of get a look at some players, see a little bit about how they're adjusting to new plastic potentially, just see what their form looks like early in the year. I mean, remember last year, Kona Panis playing well at the All-Star event was a little bit of a signal about what we were going to see from her later, ended up winning Waco and having her best season to date. So who's going to be that breakout player this year? Maybe we'll get a clue at the All-Star event. Are you feeling excited for this event this year, Josh? Just in general and relative to last year's?
Significantly more so. I think two things kind of contribute to this. First off, last year, I didn't even watch last year's, I think I watched half of it maybe. I caught clips, I watched highlights, I would tune in here and there, but I didn't really make a significant effort. And had I not, I really did not watch a lot of it last year. Wasn't interested, didn't find it all that exciting or compelling. I think this format is going to be really entertaining, and I'm excited to watch the different format. And I hope that it I hope that it lives up to the potential that I think that it has. But the second thing that's really important is that this was a crazy off season. And so I think, like a lot of other fans, I am really excited to start watching players with their new bags. I'm excited to watch Chris Dickerson throwing different plastic. I'm excited to watch Kona throwing different plastic. Haley King. I mean, there are a lot of changes of people who are former teammates that we're going to see in the draft, teammates being used loosely. It's going to be, I think, a really interesting time to kind of watch the dynamics of players who are comfortable versus players who maybe are still trying to adjust. And I think that's going to be, obviously not season determining, but I think, like you mentioned with Kona, it will be an insight, at least into the first couple tournaments of the Pro Tour season.
Well, I mean, I just want to see how players are throwing their discs. Do they look like they're in form, or do they look a little sloppy? Mm-hmm. Not that there's a lot of stakes on this tournament. I mean, I think we could see aggression, particularly in doubles. There's often an advantage to doing that. So, you're not going to it's not going to be an obvious oh, well, so-and-so won this tournament, therefore they're going to win the LVC in 2 weeks. But I'm still interested to see just how people look. Are they look like they're comfortable? How's their putting look? Putting is something that translates from course to course to course, regardless of what it is. So how do players like Chris Dickerson look with whatever putter they're using? Speaking of dynamics, no Ricky. He's taken the event off to continue to get used to his new bag. We already know no Paul Macbeth, so a couple of truly probably the biggest all-stars not competing. But you know what? I'm it's still exciting. I think it's going to be fun to see who gets drafted in which positions. And of course, we'll have a full preview show and get you ready for the event on Thursday. The event starts on Friday. So I'm excited to get some disc golf back, Yeah. And this is, by the way, I don't really know much about the course they're going to be playing in Tucson, but this is the way to experience Arizona's disc golf, right? When the Memorial got taken off the tour, it's it was probably time for that. And I am totally okay with watching a very wide open, not very tree heavy hyzer type event as an all-star thing. Mm-hmm. This is a perfect way. And then we can go off to Las Vegas where everybody has to throw a mile. And of course, tons of 2022 preview content starting next week. We're going to have basically 4 straight shows of all looking ahead to 2022 and the Las Vegas Challenge and everything else that we got coming up in disc golf. Very exciting. Some unfortunate news this week, as JohnE McCray at a tournament over the weekend had a heart attack, and he was midway through the round. He was leading the tournament, and he right around the turn to the back 9 started to have some chest pain. And I talked to his wife Jennifer yesterday for an article that's up on the website. You can check that out. And he'd apparently been dealing with like a pectoral injury, like a chest injury. So she thought, and he thought, that it was, like a muscular thing. So they were like working on the muscle a little bit, try to like alleviate the pain. But then when they get to hole 13, he suddenly turns very pale, starts sweating in the cold weather in Florida, and has to sit down. And at that point, I think it was, Jennifer realized there's a problem and went to go get the car. And there was actually a doctor ahead on the next card, Jeremy Drake, who actually emailed us to let us know about this. And he went over and assessed JohnE and realized that he was probably having a heart attack, called 911. Thankfully, the ambulance was there very quickly. They got him to the hospital, and his heart fully stopped at the hospital. He died, like Jennifer said to me, he died. And he was out, no heartbeat, for 4 minutes. And they brought him back with a defib, and luckily he is now recovering well. Last I saw, he's now fully lucid. Initially he was sort of incoherent, and then yesterday he was having normal conversations, but still thought it was Saturday when the heart attack happened. But now I guess he recognizes sort of what's going on and doesn't seem to have significant cognitive issues, which is always a concern when your heart stops for, more than a minute or something. So certainly keeping JohnE in our thoughts and his whole family, and a legend of the game, Masters Worlds champ, U.S. Masters champ, was going to be out on a bunch of the Disc Golf Pro Tour this year, has already canceled his LVC and Texas Swing tournaments because he needs at least 3 months to recover, and then they'll have to reassess at that point. So, just keeping him in our thoughts as, he goes through obviously what's a very traumatic and scary experience.
Yeah, it's always hard to see that happen when we've got people like JohnE, who, like you said, legend in the game. I think what's funny, Jen in the interview said that after he was kind of coming to and becoming a little bit more cognizant of what was going on around him, he started asking who'd won the tournament and why they didn't let him finish.
Yeah, he apparently said, why didn't you let me finish? I could have finished and then you could have taken me to the hospital. And everybody was like, no. We could not have done that.
That's the most JohnE thing in the world, I feel like. But yeah, definitely in our thoughts and our prayers, and best wishes goes out to him and his family for a speedy recovery.
Absolutely. I know Jim Oates, another older disc golfer, also just had a heart attack and is recovering. So thinking of him as well. And, I think the scary thing about this, he doesn't have health insurance. And this has been something that's been on my mind for years. And we talked about it on the show. It's going to be a really difficult financial situation to have to go through. He had to have emergency surgery, 3 stents put in to alleviate 100% artery blockage. I have no idea how much that costs, but I'm sure it's going to be 6 figures. And I just implore disc golfers who are all pretty much 1099 contractors with their sponsors, not employees. So they're typically not eligible to get health care coverage through their employer, which is the typical model, you got to go out, you got to get the healthcare.gov or your local state coverage, even if it's just pure catastrophic coverage. It's just I hope they're able to weather that. It can be so damaging financially if you don't have health insurance and you have something bad like this happen to you.
Yeah, a lot of affordable options. I agree. I think it's a good recommendation to at least just go check it out. And hopefully the Pro Tour is able to succeed in offering health insurance to its athletes.
100%.
Tour card holding athletes.
Just making it easy for people to sign up. I mean, I think it's not like anybody's specifically obligated to help disc golfers get health insurance when they are capable of getting it themselves. But I think I've talked to enough that don't have health insurance that it's seems like a thing that people would take advantage of if it was made more easily available to them. And I don't know how PDGA event insurance covers these kinds of things. I doubt it covers heart attacks during an event, but hopefully there's maybe some recourse there. And but of course, the number one thing, I'm glad he made it through. Mm-hmm. That's obviously far more important than any money consideration. And hope he has a swift recovery and we see him back out on the course very soon. Elsewhere in the news this week, Ricky Wysocki got written up in Sports Illustrated, at least on the website. Does anybody get the magazine anymore? Do they even make the magazine anymore? But SI.com had an article about Ricky, calling him the greatest, I think it said greatest golfer in the headline. Is Ricky Wysocki the greatest golfer in the world with an asterisk?
Yeah, a case for Ricky Wysocki is the world's best golfer.
That's the way to get the clickbait.
Yeah.
They're all the golfers will click this wondering who is Ricky Wysocki. But Ricky does, he says, I think after last year, I am about being, the best player in the sport right now. There are obviously players who are great, but in 2021, I won every award there was, and I was also the most consistent player out there. I mean, he's right. That's facts. He won PDGA Player of the Year, Ultra World Disc Golf Player of the Year, DGPT Player of the Year, and the knock is the majors. That's the only knock. Otherwise, he was clearly the best player.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Josh? This article doesn't even talk about Paul Macbeth. What do you think about that?
It feels like this writer heard about the Ricky Wysocki deal, right? It got on social media in a couple places, especially thanks to his crypto. Honestly, I'm going to say real quick, I personally would not take $250,000 signing bonus in crypto of any means, because we watched Ricky's signing bonus plummet, 18% or whatever the week after he got it. So financially, I don't know what I think of that decision. And that's personally wouldn't go with that, but he made headlines in places that he otherwise would not have, got articles and podcast discussion in places he otherwise would not have, and got more eyes on him than any other disc golfer in terms of their deal, I think, thanks to the crypto. I mean, I was looking at some of the social media trends around Ricky's endorsement deal, and I think they were higher than when Paul signed his 10-year, $10 million. I mean, I have to go back and double check the numbers exactly, but I saw Ricky on a crypto podcast that has tens of millions of subscribers that he got discussed. And so,
I mean, that's total bait for crypto news, crypto podcast.
Yeah, 100%. And so maybe that, the actual $250,000 wasn't the best decision in terms of how he took it, but the publicity, it worked for him there. So, and I think that's part of it. So I think this writer hears about this deal, right? And then comes in and he takes what is a news story, a breaking news story, and turns it into a long, thought interview piece.
A little bit more of a profile.
Long form. Yeah, exactly. And so he builds it in this way that, I mean, I don't see quotes from anybody else in this. Except, I guess he talked with Dynamic Discs.
So they went and talked, McCabe and Rusko both quoted in here as well.
Yeah, so they go talk to his sponsors and just make this profile about Ricky, but it's very clear that, I mean, there are really good things about this article.
I would say it's pretty good, all things considered.
I think so too.
It's decently researched. I mean,
but it lacks context.
A little bit. But context in the disc golf sense of like, we know more, and
yes.
But the author, I mean, it contextualizes stuff. It does mention Paul McBeth's contract being, matching the average annual value.
Okay.
It mentions the, like, who's the other potential best player in the world? It mentions James Conrad because he was the world champion in 2021. And for like an external journalist writing about disc golf, that makes a lot of sense. Like, sure. What metric should you use? I mean, you could probably ask around a little bit more and get some more quotes about that kind of thing. But, it is just funny that, like, I think most people probably still are thinking about Paul as the other potential candidate. Maybe Eagle makes the list right now.
Yeah.
As like sort of greatest player on the planet at the moment.
Right.
And, somebody on Reddit, Mr. Gold Team on Reddit, on the disc golf subreddit, said Paul McBeth is going to put a printout of this article on every door in his house, his cars, whatever he tours in, the back of his eyelids, all his discs, under the bill of his hat. He's going to pay a guy to hold it on a sign at every event. Can't wait. Good comment.
It's a great comment. And honestly, it's going to feel kind of funny afterwards if Paul does that, right? If Paul comes and just has another historic season and blows everyone out of the water, this article is going to be really funny afterwards. But you know what this article reminds me of, to an extent? It reminds me of the old 2016 LA Times article when they did the profile on McBeth.
A classic.
The classic. I was even talking about that this weekend with Scott, because when he says, and Paul explicitly says about Ricky,
this is a quote in the article.
Yeah, I'm quoting this article. I have it up. I'm reading it to you right now. If it's close, you could pretty much count him out. McBeth says of Ricky Wysocki, another frequent challenger.
You can count him out if it's close. I mean, that quote is like, it's like one of the legendary quotes of all time in disc golf. And like, is that more disrespectful? Or what's more disrespectful? That quote about Ricky, or the fact that there's no reference of McBeth as the potential challenger as greatest player in this SI article? Who's more mad, McBeth or Wysocki?
I think Wysocki probably had to have been more mad. But here's what's funny. Remember, Wysocki went and won Worlds that year.
That's right.
So he comes after this article. If it's close, you can count him out, and then takes Worlds, and then does it again the year after.
I remember we interviewed Ricky in that off season after that tournament, and we asked him about this whole thing, and that's probably, I've talked to Ricky many times. That's got to be the best interview we've ever done with him. He was delivering. It's like talking about giving Paul a taste of his own medicine. And, it's still like a fun thing. Like last year, we didn't get a ton of Ricky versus Paul, but like Open at Belton was a sick, like, I know it was a Silver Series, but like that was one of the better final rounds of the year. Just like those two guys going back and forth, playing great disc golf. And, Ricky coming out on top. It was just awesome.
Yeah. Well, and what makes me laugh is, we had Paul on the show, and he says he'd rather win a major than player of the year any year. And then we've got the quote in this article that says that, I won every award there was, and I was the most consistent. So, I mean, they're just giving their cases back and forth.
That's right.
Without ever mentioning the elephant in the room.
Right.
That they're talking about each other. It's
right.
Honestly, I think it's great for the sport, though. In a sport where everyone has to be, everyone is friendly, everyone is buddy-buddy, our drama is Nico and following what Nico's doing. I think this is meaningful and good and healthy for the sport. It is pure old-fashioned rivalry. And that is, I think that's something that's really valuable. You do. You need some of that.
It's almost too friendly these days out there. And I think, we'll probably get another, there's going to be another pair of players who kind of like have a bit of a spat. And, you think about it, like these two guys have clearly been the best disc golfers of the last decade. And I don't think anybody disputes that Macbeth has had the better career overall. I mean, that's like not really in question. Like Paul's being compared to Climo, not Ricky.
Right.
But Ricky's still in his late 20s. He has the potential to win enough to be that guy. Like Rafa Nadal in tennis just won another major, Australian. And he's now that made him the most winning tennis player at majors in history. Mm-hmm. Now, I think many people would still look at Roger Federer as the greatest player of all time. But Rafa has more majors. And so, like, it's a question. Uh-huh. And we are still in the prime of both of these guys. Like, let's remember that Macbeth was, again, I can't say it enough times, he was one miracle shot away from winning both of the important majors last year. And if he wins that, does he win Player of the Year? Like, I think it's possible. Not PDGA, but like Pro Tour, Multi-World Disc Golf. Yeah. And then you've got Ricky, who is clearly the best front to back, start of the season to end of the season, most consistent player. Like his quote is facts. Yeah. And so we've got these two guys in their prime, and we have all of this growth in the sport, and we have, these articles coming out about Paige and about Ricky, and like, it's just exciting because now we've got the European women coming back. Like the storyline creation happening right now, completely external of all of the sponsorship stuff, which is kind of like its own like fun melodrama, soap opera happening kind of like as a sideshow to the actual on-course competition. It's so good right now. And like, does Ricky still have a chance to get into the conversation as greatest ever? I mean, he's not there now, but could he get there? Like, if he's a dominant 5-year run starting in 2021 and then, he wins a bunch more majors over the next few years, you have to consider him in that conversation, don't you?
I mean, yes, yeah. Especially because when you think about what kind of cut Ricky's career a little bit, it was Lyme disease. Like,
sure.
Right? I mean, Ricky could be in the conversation right now of greatest player of all time if he didn't have 2 seasons that were very much decimated due to Lyme disease.
He's also never had the individual total season dominance that we've seen from like prime Macbeth in the mid 2010s.
And that's true.
But you make a very fair point. Like we could be having a different conversation about the whole thing if Ricky had not lost that USDGC and much of the next season to illness, basically.
Right. Well, imagine he comes back and then 2018 wins Worlds again, or just is winning Worlds consecutively and strings enough of them together. That kind of dominance inside of a single period could, and like you said, he didn't have Macbeth yet. I think this is the closest he's gotten to a single season dominance, but without the majors, it doesn't feel like it did with. It's not the same. It's not.
No one's going to remember that he was a great on the Disc Golf Pro Tour in 2021, 5 years from now.
Right. No,
they're going to look back and they're going to say, Paul won USDGC and James had, the shot to win Worlds. That's what people are going to remember.
Yeah. And so this is an important first step back for Ricky to start rewriting that, to continue writing that legacy. But he still has a long road ahead of him to do it. And even one season of true dominance, I think that counts for more now, given how important the sport is, or how much the sport has grown and how deep the pool is.
How much harder it is to be dominant like that.
So that would give him some credit, and I think establish it. But it still is going to be, yeah, remember Macbeth had 3 of those, right? Macbeth still has 5 worlds. There's always going to be but you got to get closer, right? The problem is that LeBron may not be as consistent in the championships, but he has the statistical performance outside that, regardless of the team, shows that he is an elite basketball player, which I think makes it a really interesting discussion. And then Jordan's got, obviously the stats, but the rings. Ricky does not have a statistical advantage really at all anywhere over Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's impossible to put him in the same conversation when he doesn't have the statistical advantage and he doesn't have the rings.
Yeah. I mean, and here's what it is. Ricky has won 6 majors, including 2 worlds, most recently coming in 2017. Paul has 16 major championships. 16. Okay. And 5 worlds, obviously you mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
Now got 3 USDGCs as well. And he won USDGC in 18. He won the European Open in 19, and he won USDGC in 2021. Ricky hasn't won since 2017 at a major.
Yep.
And, got to give credit to Ricky where it's due. He had a very good season. He was always in the mix. And the thing is, without the majors, you're never going to be in that conversation. I mean, like, he's a Hall of Famer.
Sure.
But they, it's not, there's a long way to go. I do think it's possible that he's still young enough that he could go on a tear, especially with 4 majors starting to, be in the mix every year. And, but he's got to start winning at least 1 a year. He probably, to really catch Macbeth, he needs to win 2 to 3 a year for the next 5 to 6 years while he's still in his prime. It's probably not realistic, but it's sure going to be fun to see it all play out.
And one of those has to be USDGC.
Gotta get it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care if Ricky catches Paul by winning 2 worlds and then a bunch of Champions Cups and European Opens. If it's not done at Worlds, at USDGC, he's got to have a USDGC. Has to. And it's mind-boggling that he doesn't have one yet.
What a crazy streak. I mean, 2012, Paul wins Worlds, Ricky is the runner-up. 2014, same. Playoff in Portland. Incredible tournament. Go back and watch it if you want a little prelude to this season. 2015, same thing. Macbeth beats Ricky. 2019, Macbeth beats Ricky. Remember, Ricky came all the way back and made it a game after it. It was Paul's for sure. And then Ricky was like, I'm going to have one of the greatest rounds of the season. And made it interesting. he was forced to try to throw it in on 18 in Peoria, if you remember that. And then, of course, Macbeth is literally always in the top 2 at Worlds. It's been 8 straight years or something. 2015, 2016 when Ricky won, Macbeth was second. 2017 when Ricky won, Macbeth was second. Wow. It's a lot of fun. Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about pay to play and how we're seeing things change quick in pay to play disc golf. Stay with us. It's the Upshot. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. Well, the Pound 2022 ambassadors have been announced, and you've got to hear these names. Nate Sexton, Jeremy Colling, Lisa Fakis, Dustin Keegan, Zoe Andyke, Cole Radalin, Maria Oliva, Vanessa Van Dyken, and Christian Dietrich are all going to be repping Pound. They'll be wearing Pound bags out on the course, and of course they are, because these are the best bags in the game. Go to PoundDiscGolf.com to check out your options and get ready for their next custom drop coming at the beginning of February. Welcome back to The Upshot. So UDisc has been putting out their annual World's Top Courses list. They do the top 10 courses based on essentially ratings of the course from users on UDisc. There's some, adjustments that they make for various things, but essentially, like, what are the top rated courses in the world? And this year's list is looking a lot different than what we've seen in the past couple of years. So far, they've announced 10 through 4, with 3, 2, and 1 coming out over the next 3 days of this week. So from what we've seen so far, Josh, what stands out? I mean, first, give us the list. What do we got? And then what do you notice about this list?
Yeah. So number 10, Blue Ribbon Pines in Minnesota. Great course. I love watching coverage there. Next is Flip City Disc Golf Course in Shelby, Michigan. Number 8 is Caliper Disc Golf Course at Sandpoint, Idaho. I'll come back to that. I've played
What's
that
up,
course.
Idaho?
Played that course. It's great.
All right.
Number 7 is Eagles Crossing Disc Golf Course in Missouri.
So much hype.
So much hype. Yes. Brewster Ridge is number 6. No introduction needed up in Vermont, part of Smuggler's Notch. The next 2 are actually international. So Kipasu Pro at Heinola Disc Golf Park in Heinola, Finland. And then number 4 is Overis in Disc Golf Park in Vestnes, Norway. So 2 international. But what stood out to me, so a Caliper pops up on this list, right? Never been on the list before. Relatively newer course. It hasn't been in the ground for too long. It opens in 2018. And I've played this course. It's an amazing course. Fairways are gorgeous. The tee pads are well manicured. The signage is perfect. I mean, it was a dream to play this course. And I was thinking about it, and I started looking at this list. All of them but one are pay-to-play courses. And the one exception was was in Finland at the Kipasu Pro. And that one asks for a $5 or the equivalent of $5 donation when you play it. So it's not required to pay, but every other course is a pay-to-play course, ranging from $5 to $8 all the way up to $35 at Eagles Crossing. $35 for a weekend morning round at Eagles. I mean, it's
expensive, but you pay more to play golf.
Yes, yeah, and that's true. But I mean, all of these are pay to play, and it's clear that pay to play courses are becoming increasingly popular and shaping what is the standard of good disc golf courses in the status quo right now.
I mean, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think that in like 5 years, we won't even see any public courses being used as professional tour stops whatsoever. Maybe there's like one exception that like there's a special event on tour where they like play the Muni course. But we are quickly entering the era where if you want to play the best courses, you're going to pay. Because it turns out it costs money to upkeep high quality disc golf courses. And, some of if you think about the best courses around you, wherever you live, that are public and are for free to play, a lot of times those are being maintained by volunteers of your local disc golf club. Somebody is paying, right? You're paying fees to play in the tournaments. That's going to the course. There are other ways of funding besides having to pay for the round itself. But somebody is paying either with time or money to make sure that course is well maintained. When branches fall in storms, someone's got to clear them out of there. When the tee pads need to get replaced, someone's got to replace them. And I just think that we're going to get to the point where it's like 4 or 5 years ago, people hated pay to play courses. Like it was like, people were like reluctantly, okay, I guess I'll pay, and there was like occasional exceptions like Maple Hill where it was like, this is the greatest course on earth, so I will pay to go play this one course. But there was just a lot more of a reluctance to pay. And I just think that's going to change super fast. I'm not saying that there's not a place in the sport for free local courses. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially as like welcoming new players. But if we want to have great disc golf courses and we want to have the amenities that we dream about for events where it's, you know, there's parking and there's food and there's
a pro shop,
really great tee pads. There's a pro shop. There's all the thing, you know, there's stands, there's places to watch various holes from. That all has to be designed by someone who is like planning the course for that stuff. And that means it's going to be a private course on private land that's probably going to be pay to play if it's even open to the public at all. So I'm not surprised to see changes on this list. You know, there's already people are clamoring to see Eagles Crossing as a tour stop. People talking about like, is this course ready for Worlds? And of course, the problem is there's not necessarily something similarly high quality to use as the second course, which is kind of the rhythm we've seen with Worlds. But, you know, it's easy to imagine Champions Cup going there sometime soon. So this is just a fascinating and rapid development in disc golf that I think is only going to accelerate from here. I mean, you know, we've talked a lot about how USDGC maybe needs to be prepared to move away from Winthrop. You know, some people think they should move now because the landscape, the course is just not capable of keeping up with today's players. I'm more worried about it from the standpoint of Winthrop won't let you make changes, or Winthrop says, well, we have a big basketball thing that weekend. Never mind, we can't do it anymore. And so, you know, trying to establish permanent homes for some of our most important tournaments on private land.
Well, and the tricky part about it is public land is oftentimes multi-purpose. There's really difficult to find public land that isn't used for other purposes, you know, at the same time and on similar complexes. You have tennis courts oftentimes and playgrounds and pavilions for picnics. And disc golfers complain about those kind of park courses because there's people in the way. You got dog walkers, you've got other people in your fairways while you're trying to play disc golf. And that's a reality you have to live with. But the tricky part about private courses is, yeah, we want them on private land and we want someone who's doing that work. But that land is so valuable right now and becoming increasingly so. A lot of these people who own private courses anywhere near some sort of suburban or urban area must be worth so much money. And so in order to justify the investment of a disc golf course, you need to justify not selling it to the developers. And part of that goes then into not necessarily, you know, making it rich with disc golf courses, but at least compensating your time and efforts that you're putting into it in order to justify using the property as such. And so I think I agree with you. I think that this is going to be a trend that continues. I honestly think it's a good trend in a lot of ways. I don't want every course to be pay to play. I like having my 9-hole city park just down the road, you know, that I take friends or my cousins to, or that I can just go try out new discs. But I want more courses that have a pro shop on there, that are well-kept tee pads, that the baskets are replaced regularly and not rusting and, you know, the cage is falling out the bottom. And those are the kind of courses I really enjoy playing. And when you look at the hobby of disc golf, it still is incredibly cheap relative to other activities that you could do. Most of these courses cost half the price of a movie ticket, you know, less than what it would cost for you to go out to dinner, definitely less than a round of golf or for tickets for another, you know, for a pro sporting event.
And even for like a terrible, like municipal course, yeah. It's still cheaper than that. Yeah.
And so it's still relatively cheap. And I don't want people to be priced out of playing the best courses, but I think that investment in those courses is important. And it's the way that we continue to move the sport forward and create the kind of facilities and complexes that draw in and continue to increase the presence of disc golf as a legitimate sport and continue to draw in players of all different backgrounds.
So last year's top three were number 3, Krokol in Norway, number 2, Hillcrest Farm at Prince Edward Island in Canada, and number 1 was Maple Hill in Massachusetts. Do you think Maple Hill retains the number 1 spot?
Probably. And you know, like you talked about, with the way the ratings work, it's based on, 5-star, 4-star ratings. They give priority to older. So the older your rating is, the more it's worth. Courses that don't have enough ratings get penalized. They do all sorts of adjustments.
My course has 2 ratings and they're both 5 stars.
Right.
I have a 5-star course. Put me on the list.
So they make all these adjustments. It feels like it's weighted in a way that Maple Hill is going to continue to be incredibly popular. And the other thing about it is that Maple Hill has the history to back it up too. People go to Maple Hill and they're excited because they're playing the legendary Maple
Pilgrimage.
Hill. Right, exactly. They're going to give it 5 stars. And even if you didn't love Maple Hill and you're like, I think there were courses that were better, if you drove or flew all the way out to go play Maple Hill, you're probably going to put 5 stars anyway because you don't want to justify spending that much money on a 4-star course. So there are just so many factors that I think are going to push Maple Hill into a 5-star course. I would expect Maple Hill to retain their top spot. It's interesting because all 3 of those courses that were top 3 last year have yet to be featured in the top 10.
Right.
So
it's interesting. Will they all return in that same top 3 order? There's a lot of courses from last year's list that did not make it to the top 10, at least so far. Diavolo in North Carolina, the Canyons in Illinois, Idlewild in Kentucky, of course, a tour stop, Milo McIver in Oregon, all in the top 10 last year, not there this year. So not sure what to make of that. I guess we'll see once we have the full list. But certainly the era of the best courses being the ones that were built in 1970 by Steady Ed are coming to an end. Not that those are not going to be important courses for a long time to come. We got one here in the New York City area, but it is just the fact that the sort of the most exciting and innovative courses with the most upkeep and the most work put into creating great layouts and great tee pads, etc. That's all going to be happening on private courses from here on out. So let us know what you think. What's going to be number 1 coming out on Friday? You can check out the full list on UDisc's website. All right, that is going to do it for today's edition of the Upshot. Thanks so much for tuning in. Our interview series continues tomorrow on Wednesdays. Hope you're checking that out. If you haven't already, give us a shout over on YouTube, like and subscribe, and appreciate everybody who's been writing in and subscribing, and feels like we've got a very exciting season in front of us. So Thursday's show, we'll be talking about the All-Star Weekend, and we've already got our mock draft up, so if you go back a couple episodes, you can hear us make our picks for the draft, and we'll see what the players end up doing in their draft on Thursday night. For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you on Thursday right here on The Upshot.